Hey everybody, it's Rothbard's Disciple here. I am bringing you guys a video on Bitcoin. It's been a while since I've made a video, and that's simply because nothing has changed. The things that need to be done are the exact same as they were years ago. When I started this channel, it's the exact same, so about 2 years ago. Um, so since nothing has changed, I just waited for a while because there's nothing to really talk about other than to say that, we're still making the same mistakes. This video I wanted to talk about why Bitcoin is failing, and by Bitcoin I mean BTC, BCH, and BSV. Okay, Bitcoin BTC is failing because it's mathematically impossible for it to be used globally. It's like if you look at what the white paper says Bitcoin is, BTC is not that. It's definitionally wrong. It's not what was promised. Like when you watched Game of Thrones, the king that was promised, that's what Bitcoin is, and BTC cannot be the king that was promised. If you look at Bitcoin Cash, it functionally has no use right now. It's used less even than BTC. There's not really any good apps out there right now. There's nothing that's really notable that's, letting people do things that they've never done before. It's really kind of a snooze fest, is what Bitcoin Cash is. What they're doing on Bitcoin Cash right now makes absolutely no sense to me, from the standpoint that they're trying to scale, but Bitcoin Cash has no use. So that scaling that they're allowing Bitcoin to do is it's kind of irrelevant. And another way to think about this is like, if you were building roads, and this is my first point on the slide, so I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but if you were building roads, would you build roads to places where people are already traveling a lot, or would you just build roads and then expect people to travel because you've built the roads? It's very simple here. You build roads where people are going, and so if you don't have people going places, there's no point for roads, and so that's where Bitcoin Cash is. They're building a lot of roads, but they have nobody with cars. Okay, and this is what I've been saying before. You need to build applications. Applications are the cards in the Bitcoin network, like in the infrastructure. Applications are cars. They get people to where they're going, you know. And then third and finally, there's Bitcoin SV. Bitcoin SV has adopted a very interesting position in terms of scaling. They probably are the blockchain that scales best right now, which is kind of weird, like in terms of their block size and what their miners have proven capable of handling. They seem to be the biggest in terms of just transactions they can handle. I might be wrong on this. I know that there's a lot of stress tests that go on now, and I don't pay attention to the exact details of all of them. Like I don't have it all marked down. Anyways, um, even though that they might still slightly be the best scaled blockchain, and I say best scaled blockchain mainly because of their miners, not because of potential scaling. Bitcoin Cash can potentially scale better than BSV, but it seems that BSV's miners are more ready for scaling right now. But anyways, the problem is that the structure that they've decided to use for their MetaNet, it allows one single person to completely dominate all of their block space. So they have all this, like the most block space to use, but we saw this before. Ryan Charles has done this multiple times. Derek Moore has done this multiple times, where they will start uploading data to the blockchain and they will cause chain splits. They cause kind of a bit of havoc for the miners. The users, it doesn't really matter for their experience, like at all. But again, because Bitcoin SV is in the same position as Bitcoin Cash, they've decided to put raw data onto or for their MetaNet, but nobody really has a use for that. So 98% of all transactions on Bitcoin SV are just posting weather data to the blockchain, which is retarded. Like if that's what Bitcoin was put here for, so that after a decade we'd be adding a little bit of weather data to the blockchain, then just fucking kill me now. Kill me fucking now. So Bitcoin SV, like Bitcoin Cash, has no users, but unlike Bitcoin Cash, for Bitcoin SV to scale in order to basically put the internet on the blockchain, and like doing this is so much harder with a blockchain network, because a blockchain network, it approaches a near complete graph, which just means all the nodes are connected to each other, and the amount of data, like since it's not one centralized node, it's very easy to change one node, but to have thousands of nodes that are decentralized, and to keep them all in tandem at the same time while transferring like all of the data that the world transfers is it's not easy. Okay, it's much harder than building an internet. Like it's stupid hard, and we need scaling billions of times larger than today um, to even get close to it. Um, it's stupid. That's all I can say. Is even if Bitcoin SV's metanet structure would work, it would make sense to start with hashes and things like that, because if you have good hash-based metanet applications, you can still fill up gigabyte worth of blocks, and that's literally all that Bitcoin SV has right now. So it would make more sense to focus on those applications because it's a better and more economical use of the blockchain. But Bitcoin SV just thinks the more blockchain you use, the better. It's sort of weird because it's like when you build a car, do you build the car to have good gas mileage, or do you build a car to use as much gas as possible? Bitcoin SV is like a car maker that builds cars to use as much gas as possible because I don't know, gas is like it's got electrolytes, man, and that's what cars need. That's what gas has. It's got them electrolytes. Anyways, getting on to my actual PowerPoint here, though. So let's go ahead and just jump in and talk about this slide that I made. It's got a couple points on here that I think that we need to talk about. A couple points that I think the Bitcoin community knows, but it's one of those things that you don't like. You know it, but you don't act on it. You kind of throw it in the back of your mind, forget about it. Um, this first one is just as far as scaling goes. So this is for the BSV and Bitcoin Cash communities. And it's just a question. When you're building roads, do you build the roads first, or do you look to see where people are traveling to and build the roads between places people travel to most? That's the question, and it's a pretty obvious question. You build roads where people are. There is actually there's a couple countries in the world who build roads before people go places. One of the biggest countries to do this is North Korea. They've got massive road systems in North Korea. In certain areas, obviously certain areas, there's like the roads are all crap, but there's some areas near the capital which have massive road systems that nobody really uses. Okay. Um, the lesson to be learned from this is pretty simple. Scaling is irrelevant unless you have market demand. Okay. And so, like, if you're building roads, you need cars. For Bitcoin, if you're going to build a scalable blockchain, you need people to use that scalable blockchain, and so you need apps for it. And this is why I keep saying, or this is what I've been trying to let everybody know, is that so long as Bitcoin does not have good apps, it's going to fail no matter what. And so this scaling that we're doing is irrelevant. Okay, and it's simply because if we just keep building more roads, we're going to be like North Korea. We're not going to have any assets left over to build anything else. What we need is something for people to do on Bitcoin that gives them, it's such an addictive thing to do that people just keep coming back. If you look at the early days of Bitcoin, the first thing to actually do this to give people something new to do on Bitcoin, it was Silk Road. And I'm not advocating, people using drugs and whatnot, but that was a smart use of Bitcoin in terms of getting its use out there because it allowed you to do something that was impossible otherwise. Okay, now obviously we should be focusing on the legal ventures, things that aren't going to get us all arrested. Um, but those are the types of things that we need to focus on, things that haven't been done before. Okay, and the reason why is we go back to our road example. If you're building a road, how do you decide which road to build first? Do you build roads to places where like there are no roads connecting people, or do you expand roads you already have? Now, technically speaking, this question is not so simple because sometimes you want to expand roads before you connect places that aren't already connected. But when you have two cities that are not connected by a road, um, the opportunity costs for those citizens to travel without using the new proposed road are very high because they have there is no road from their city to the city they're trying to go to, so they would have to use another road, use a bunch more gas, whatever it is, but their opportunity costs are higher than simply expanding a road that already goes to a city, because those citizens can already make it back and forth from that city. It's just whether or not you want to give them more room on the road as they do. Okay, and so we need to be focusing, instead of focusing on trying to sort of compete with roads that are already, or compete with businesses within Bitcoin that are already well established. We need to be building roads to new cities that are not connected to road networks. Okay, and by that I mean we need to be building. We need to use Bitcoin in ways um, that allows you to do things that have never been done before. And if you do this, this is what really will be valuable to your user base. And secondly, the thing that makes it really important and really interesting is that if the opportunity cost of um, the service you are uh, providing through Bitcoin, if the opportunity cost for getting that service without using Bitcoin is very high, um, then they'll basically be willing to do an immense amount of free work. And I'm actually going to show you guys this later on in this video. There's something that I've been trying to do with Bitcoin that is almost impossible without Bitcoin. It'll cost me millions of dollars without Bitcoin, but with Bitcoin I can do it for a couple of cents. And when you have a scenario like this, where the only other alternative is extremely expensive, the amount of labor that an individual is willing to put into something is very high. And so you'll see in what I'm going to show you that I put a lot of work into my project, and I'm willing to put in a lot more work so the applications that get built for my service can be pretty shitty. And that's fine by me, because like my alternative is paying millions of dollars, which I don't have to complete a project, which I don't know if it'll succeed. And so there's a huge risk there. And so that, I'll probably never actually finish the project without a blockchain-based service to, make it a lot cheaper. But in these scenarios, the person who has a high opportunity cost is very much going to work harder to, or put more labor into their creation, into their project, and they're not going to care that much if the service isn't even that good. Okay, and I'm not saying don't have a good service. I'm just saying the bar is low. Sorry about that. Next thing, what are the opportunity costs of the current Bitcoin Cash apps? Well, current Bitcoin Cash apps compete with financial markets, which are the most competitive markets in the world. Almost all the applications offer services that are done for just about as cheap. In many cases, a lot of the services that you can do, they're done for cheaper on the market. So like Venmo is free, Bitcoin is not free. And I know there are some costs with Venmo, but there's basically no costs. Um, so when people say that, like, um, Bitcoin's killer app is money, it's like, well, yeah, that's going to be what Bitcoin's going to be most likely used for in the future for the most part. But money, because it is the killer app and everybody already knows it, money has been the killer app since the beginning of capitalism. Um, Everybody's competing in that market, so that's not really the market we want. Okay, the only industries that you can have that have high opportunity costs, so the only industries where you can find these customers that are willing to do a lot of work, that are willing to accept products that aren't necessarily the best, and that are willing to pay you a lot of money, these are untapped markets. It has to be a market that just isn't being serviced in any way by anyone at the moment. Okay, and when I say in any way or at the or at when I say this service has to not be being offered on the market in any way, it simply having too high of a cost for the service to be used by people is like that works as well. Okay, I'm just saying there has to be a market which is physically barred from completing a certain action. Okay, so that's what we need to be looking for if we really want to succeed with Bitcoin, because then we get these users who, like, they will only be able to use Bitcoin for their service, and they'll be willing to invest a lot of their time, energy, and finances into this service that they're receiving. Okay. Um, if you want to find these untapped markets with Bitcoin, you have to apply Bitcoin itself, not its monetary attributes. Okay, Bitcoin is not money. Money is a feature of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is like, it's this weird protocol sort of thing. It's this decentralized network of miners that all converge on consensus. It's got network properties that the nodes tend towards a complete graph. Bitcoin, it's not money. It can be used as money, but it's not money. The token, I guess, within Bitcoin can be used as money, but Bitcoin itself is not money. One such untapped market that we're going to talk about that I've already hinted at a little bit already is Hivemind DACs. I might actually discuss that in a part 2 of this video because this video is getting a little bit longer than I wanted it to, but that's fine. When I say Hivemind DACs, all I mean is corporations where there isn't really a the concept of owner is changed in that you will be an owner of digital assets, but you will never own the idea of the digital asset. You will only own a specific version of a digital asset. So in that way, other people can sort of copy and add on to your work and even sell the things that they add on to your work, but you will still retain ownership in your particular version of the idea. Okay, and I know a lot of libertarians are going to be going crazy at my um, statement where I say owning an idea, or when you own a particular version of an idea, but this is actually fully consistent with, the sort of Kinsellian theory of intellectual property, in that you're not actually ever owning an idea, you're just owning the right to call a specific idea your own. And from an artist standpoint, that is actually very important. And like I said, we'll get into this in a little bit. But from an artist standpoint, being able to stamp your basically sign of approval on your work is important, because people who follow an artist want that artist's actual work, okay? And so at any point in time, an artist, like if you have a song, if Taylor Swift has a song, I don't really know, I don't listen to Taylor Swift even though I use her as an example all the time. I think one of the songs is Bad Blood. It's something like that. It's close enough. I know the title's something like that, but Bad Blood, her song about Katy Perry or whatever. But when she releases that song, people want her fans want to know that it's her actual song, and so they will specifically want the song, the Bad Blood song that Taylor Swift has stamped, and so that's an actual part of the product, and it's a scarce thing because Taylor Swift at any one point in time can only stamp and say like one particular version of the song is her song. Okay, there's only one particular stamp that, or at one time, only one stamp is valid. You know, so there's a scarcity there that makes it an actual product, and that's what you can actually, with a Hivemind DAC, you can actually, using Bitcoin, you can guarantee that these rights are actually defended. So to just wrap up part 1 here for this last slide, we need to talk about the token problem. Now, what I mean when I bring up the token problem is that, you know, uh, within people or within communities creating tokens, people really have a poor understanding of how tokens work. The Bitcoin Cash community, like, this is so ridiculous, and this is so evident, like, it boggles my mind. Like, for how, like, the Bitcoin Cash people, there's a lot of smart people there, but the way they're trying to apply tokens, like it's about the worst way you could apply tokens possible. And what I mean by that is Bitcoin Cash is trying to become like what Ethereum was 3 to 4 years ago. Okay, Bitcoin Cash is trying to become like what Ethereum was years ago. How do we expect? How does Bitcoin Cash expect to beat things like Ethereum if it's just copying what Ethereum did in the past? Okay, we have to start doing things that are actually interesting and usable and workable. If you look at the Ethereum tokens, there's still not a single Ethereum token that really has any real use case. They're all just promises. They say they're going to do stuff, they don't do them. Okay, and now Bitcoin Cash is doing it, and we're supposed to cheer it on. Like if you look at like the CoinSpice appreciation token, and basically like the main problem with most of the tokens that Bitcoin Cash is creating is that money is universal, okay, right? So when you have one version of money, like that's your version of money. Right now, the world's version of money is the U.S. dollar. That's money in the world. Wherever you are, the U.S. dollar is money. Um, which is the closest thing we have to money, because we live in a weird status society where everyone tries to have their own money and their own country, but that doesn't really make any sense. But anyways, if money is universal, tokens of value are redundant because the original token on Bitcoin are Bitcoins. Okay, and so this is something that a lot of people really don't pay attention to. Is that one? Obviously, most people know Bitcoins are not Bitcoin, but Bitcoins, what they actually are, is it's a hash token, and it's the hash token for value on Bitcoin. And more simply put, when you have a hash token, and by hash token, again, if you go back to what we were talking about earlier, all I mean by hash token is that you hash some data, and you hash that data into a Merkle root, and you put that Merkle root on the blockchain. For the Bitcoin transactions, you hash each transaction and link it to the last hash. Like there's a lot of information that goes into a Bitcoin transaction that gets hashed, and then once you have that transaction, that hash goes in the block, but the hash of the transaction also creates a Merkle root for everybody to see. Okay. Um, and so again, the bitcoins themselves, what you're actually sending to other people, those are just hash tokens, and they're hash tokens that represent value on Bitcoin. Okay, so they're a very unique type of hash token, and they're a hash token that should not be copied. It is basically the only thing that the Bitcoin Cash developers are copying. And this makes no sense. And I want to separate this from, like, when I say tokens of value are redundant, it doesn't mean that you can't have tokens that represent something of value, but you can't just have tokens that are supposed to have value, and because they have value, then they gain their use. Okay, so you can put things like stocks and bonds on a blockchain, because whether or not like people actually buy the token, or whether or not the token just is used for recording purposes, the value is inherently within the stocks within a token that represents stocks. It's not within the token itself. Okay, whether or not the token has value is completely irrelevant for the service it provides. Okay, and just the best way for me to explain this, and I'm not a computer science graduate, so I've had very minimal schooling in computer science. I've taught myself a little bit of coding, and I just preface this because there's going to be some people who are really well versed in computer science that are going to get pissed off at my wording for this. But the way I describe it is that valueless tokens can act as predicates for centralized networks. Okay, when I say this, what I mean by the word predicate is a predicate is just like basically um, it's like a variable that's based on whether or not a truth statement is satisfied. So you could say, like, let's say you give somebody a token on the Bitcoin Cash blockchain, and this token says this person has the right to view well, let's just say in our Taylor Swift kick, this person has the right to view all of the songs on the Taylor Swift album Bad Blood. I don't know if there's actually a Bad Blood album. I'm sorry to all you Taylor Swift fans. But then your hash token, it's a valueless token, but what that token means is that if you have that token in a wallet associated with your identity, then anytime you request to listen to a Taylor Swift song from the album Bad Blood, um, the server that decides whether or not you can listen to that song would check the blockchain to see if that truth statement is satisfied, and the truth statement would be satisfied by figuring out, does this person with this wallet address have this token in that wallet address, yes or no? And if yes, then you play the song that they requested. If no, you say you do not have the rights to listen to that song. Okay, it's really, like, it's as simple as can be. It's basically you use the blockchain in order to store variables that you want to be universal, not universal within your computer network, but universal, period. Okay, that's what the blockchain decentralized ledger is used for. Um, this gets really interesting because you actually separate ideas from digital goods. That's a weird way to phrase things, and I'm sorry that I don't have good wording for this. Nobody else really is working on things like this. But a good example of me explaining this would be like if I just talk about physical DVDs. Okay, when you buy a physical DVD, all you have bought is that single physical DVD. And I know people don't buy DVDs anymore. I hope most of you are old enough that you still do. I like DVD collections. I like physically owning my DVDs or my movies and whatnot. But anyways, Um, so if you use a hash token with a DVD, so let's say you take a DVD, you hash the DVD, you end up with some 32 byte, or I think it's 64 byte, but it's 32 characters. Whatever it is, yeah, I think 64 byte string. You got your 64 byte string, and then you would probably add like hash to that 64 byte, the original hash. You'd hash a contract, so then you got two hashes hashed together, still a 64 byte string, whatever your resulting hash is. And that contract would just say, it'd be the terms of agreement for buying the product, right? So now you've got this hash token that represents the DVD you bought. Well, let's say you go to Walmart and you buy a DVD, and a lot of the reason why people don't buy DVDs is they're kind of expensive. Say you spend like $10 for a somewhat new movie. Um, so you spent $10, you go home, you accidentally step on the DVD. That sucks. Well, and I know Walmart will sometimes offer you warranties on products. I don't think they do for DVDs, but if you break the DVD, it no longer works. Your physical DVD no longer works, and you can't watch it. And this is kind of weird because the people who sold you the DVD would probably be like, hey, you could just go back to the store and grab another DVD, because the actual costs of producing DVDs, it's like a couple pennies, even transportation costs, because you can fit a shitload of DVDs in a cardboard box. Like they're very efficient, especially if you don't have them, um, you know, in their plastic covers. And if I don't, I've never worked at a, you know, um, movie store before, but I would assume those plastic covers are very stackable. So the cost of creating and distributing DVDs is almost zero. So if the actual owner of the DVD you bought, like let's say I buy Braveheart, and the writer, I don't know who actually owns it. Is it MGM? Who knows? But anyways, the writer's Randall Wallace. So let's just say I buy Braveheart for $10, go home, accidentally drop it and step on it and break it. Do you think Randall Wallace would be mad if I were able to get another copy for free? The answer is no. And the problem with DVDs is that you haven't separated the idea from the digital good, because there's the idea of Braveheart and then there's the digital good of Braveheart, which is the actual DVD that allows you to consume the idea that is Braveheart, or that is Randall Wallace's version of Braveheart. But anyways, once you've separated those two, like if you have a hash token that you was sent to you when you bought the DVD, you could have a contract in there that says, hey, you've bought this physical DVD from us. With this DVD is you also get the right to an additional copy of the same DVD, and maybe it's like once every year. And they would do that because they don't want you to just send, they don't want you to just ask for a million copies at the store. But if you're only asking for one copy every year, you can't be distributing it to any extent that really matters. You know what I mean? Um, and so you can have a contract in there, and so you can do really interesting things, and you can actually, like, you can get very creative as far as the creation of digital products. We just talked there about the sale of digital product using Bitcoin as a predicate, but you can also be very creative within the creation of a digital product. Because when you're creating a digital product, generally speaking, there's only one version that you can create, like that one person will create and sell. Like if you look at modern IP law, which is complete garbage, um, like Disney, when they bought Star Wars, a lot of the old Star Wars stories they just completely destroyed, because the way that modern IP law works is that once you own an idea, nobody else can use that idea without your like explicit permission, and this is kind of crap. And so what you can actually do with a hash token and separating your idea from your good in some sort of digital product that you're creating is that once you've done this, once you've separated the idea from the good, you can have multiple versions of your product. So let's go back to the music example. Like let's say you're Taylor Swift and you want to use a hash token and what I call this a hive mind. But let's say you take a hash token to create a hive mind song. What you can do is let's say Taylor Swift creates her song Bad Blood. She's a super popular artist. A lot of people would like to remix it, put their, or like, maybe remake the song as a whole. maybe put little clips of that song in their own song, but there's a lot of legal costs involved, and it's really hard to do. But if you created a contract and hash that contract with with Taylor Swift's song, and put it on the blockchain, then you can have a contract that is universal, that just says to the entire world, hey, if you want to reuse this song or remake it, here's how you can do it. Here's the contract that says, what the profit distributions will be, and you can make everything really easy. And I'm going to go through that in detail in the next video. Like I said, this is part one. There's a lot to cover as far as this goes, and this might be like an 8-part series. Who knows? We'll see. I might actually get bored halfway through if I don't get any developer attention on this, though, too, because I've been saying the same thing for years, and it gets old after a while. But this is the end of part one. More parts for this video will be coming out soon.